All right. Hi, everyone. I know that it's a little past 3, actually a lot past 3. So we're going to go ahead and get things going here. We have a quorum, so I will go ahead and get started. Just a welcome to folks there on Zoom, and then we'll do a round table of introductions. So Commissioner Mitchell, would you like to start us off here?
Sure, thank you. Amy Mitchell, Park County Commissioner. Thought I'd save the 3-hour round trip drive and zoom in. So I'm looking forward to the meeting.
Great, welcome. Thanks for being here. And then we have a guest. Steve, would you like to say hello and go ahead?
Yeah, perfect.
All right.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Steve Frick, and I'm from Teller County.
Mary Duran.
Danielle McCarthy.
Good afternoon, all. Jody Barker, Area Agency on Aging Director.
Mei-Ling Rodriguez. I'm the chair with COA. Nice to see everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dayton Romero, and I am acting as vice chair.
Paula Levy, membership.
And then we have, go ahead.
Jared Verner, Public Information Officer for Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments.
And Melissa Martz, Program Development with the Area Agency on Aging.
Great. So we will go ahead with our consent items. We'll put the agenda and the minutes together. Could I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we
second.
go. Perfect.
That's
Thank
Danielle.
you. Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell and Danielle. Do we have any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Great. Passed. Thank you so much. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment requests were entered this month.
Okay. Do we have any community presentations or action items at this point? No. All right. Thanks so much. So we will go ahead with our information items. I will pass it to Paula and her welcome to some new folks.
Yes, I'd like to welcome Steve Frick from Teller County. There's been some discussion and review of your application, I believe, from, did you email an application? Yes. And we are happy to have you visit this meeting. I hope we vote him in next meeting. Yes, so next meeting, this is your observation, and we will be voting you through with flying colors, I'm sure, next meeting, but hopefully you'll like what you see and want to be a part of this commission. Welcome. I'm not sure where Steve Peterschmidt is. Okay.
So we possibly were going to have Steve Peterschmidt joining, but I have not heard from him, and it was offered up for him to come. And so, but I don't see him here today. Not yet, at least.
Okay, well, we will go ahead then. Jody always takes, the grunt here with policy and legislative and board items. So take it away.
Sure, it's a little light yet right now, but the legislative subcommittee of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments has begun meeting. There is an internal planning meeting amongst the staff to include Mr. Jared Verner, our new public information officer, and we have held one legislative subcommittee meeting. It was fairly light. Last week, actually it was just on Monday. It was kind of a review of last week's elections results, and then some general planning for the upcoming legislative session. There are no bills as of yet, but there are a couple potentials that the Area Agency on Aging has already been alerted to and that we're going to be watching. One of those, as you know, and I've mentioned before in examples, and that's the senior homestead exemption. And of course, as you know, that senior homestead exemption is already in place. But last year, it was attempted to be rewritten to include a portability clause. That is expected to be rewritten again in this next legislative session. So as we hear more, we will certainly share that information. As of right now, to our knowledge, there is not a sponsor or that process has not started yet. So as we hear more about that, we'll certainly share. The other is a third bill to a pair of bills that have already passed in 2019 and 2020 related to agencies that help placements into long-term care communities. And so as we hear more about that, we'll be sharing more as well. As of right now, it's too early for there to be bill numbers for tracking and that kind of thing. But as soon as we do, we will share that information for you. Any questions about that? The last thing I want to share is in this room on November 29th, that's Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. will be our fall legislative roundtable. That's an opportunity where PPACG Board of Directors invites state and other regional legislators to come in and hear more from PPACG around our specific items that we're going to be working on and items of interest potentially at the legislative level. And so that is open. I would invite that is open to our boards and committees. And so I would invite any of you to come. Jared, do folks have to provide an RSVP or just show? Just show up. And it is live and in person here in the room. 2 o'clock. And it's 2 to 4. And we are working to invite state legislators here as well. So, okay.
Jody, just a quick question on
Certainly.
that roundtable. I had the privilege to join one last year, I think it was at the chat. Was it at the library?
It was up at the 21C. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I thought it was such a rich conversation. What are kind of the goals or the key takeaways out of a legislative roundtable, just to orient myself a little bit?
Sure. Our goal really is to make sure that state legislators understand the initiatives and priorities by PPACG at a regional level. And so it's the beauty of it. It is truly a back and forth conversation, but the goals are to make sure that our state legislators understand the priorities of this region. And of course, those are the folks that are going to be invited. And so they'll be able to hear from the local legislators across the 3-county region. Yeah, does that answer? Sure. Good.
Melissa, I thought you had mentioned that may get rescheduled. Okay.
That is the rescheduled date. It was supposed to be like yesterday. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it
Great.
was rescheduled to the 29th at 2 p.m. is the new day.
Okay. Thank you. And then I was going to backtrack just for a second for the membership committee. Are we looking for more members? Or are we good? Oh, wait.
So
okay.
yeah, that is something that has a lot of potential. The bylaws have a minimum of 16 members potential. So yeah.
And ideally, we'd like the region covered with representatives. So the more the merrier.
Mm-hmm. So today, for example, we have Park, Teller, and El Paso County covered, which is fantastic. But there is room for more representation, especially outside of the immediate population areas. So if you have recommendations or suggestions, or if you've had a conversation with someone, you want to get those referred on to Paula as the membership chair.
Well, I want to make a comment of there's lots of people in senior industry that work in El Paso County, but might live in Peyton or might live. So knowing that they know their community, they would be more than eligible and representative of their living area versus their working area.
Yes, yes. And that's actually a really great question and comment, Paula, because when we look at membership, there are occasions where we will have someone who might work for a specific senior service organization, but they're either representing or they're on a board or commission, committee as a member of a specific community or a specific region of the county, or across our county area. And so it really can be balanced that way. The overall goal is to have 50% of the Commission on Aging membership be 60 or over, since that is our mandate. But we have plenty of room for that, for sure. So even if someone is coming into, we don't have any specific senior service agency chairs necessarily, seats on the commission. So a perfect example is there's always representation for the Regional Advisory Council from a staff member from the Alzheimer's Association, but it is not a permanent Alzheimer's Association chair. It could be someone who has deep experience in that area of service, but it does not have to be a staff member from the Alzheimer's Association, for example. So it just has worked out that way the last few years.
So I've relocated to Colorado Springs.
Gotcha.
But I know Teller County very well still, so I'm happy to be that voice, and I'm still trying to recruit more from Teller County, especially Southern Teller, where Cripple Creek.
Right.
Victor, that area, so.
Perfect. Yeah, that is just fine. Yeah, we're not, we don't compare zip codes in this process. It's really more of a question of representation versus I don't know what else to call it, but yeah, we're not checking zip codes. We want to make sure that there's the most representation from across the region as possible. So some of that's by experience and some of that's by truly where a person lives or where they serve. So all of that is taken into account. So thank you.
I think that's actually a good prompt to do another version of a roundtable for Steve in particular, but in general, just to identify what we're bringing to the table. Obviously, I'm not 60, but the work that I bring is I work with the Pikes Peak Elder Justice Center, and the mission is reducing elder abuse in the Pikes Peak region and beyond. So we specifically work with elder abuse and safe placement for folks that are experiencing abuse and neglect. I was also previously with Innovations in Aging that administers Age Friendly on behalf of the city and county. So I feel like I have a really interesting perspective with the work I'm doing, and I always advocate that we are all aging. So I really appreciate having the experiences of growing together as a team and bringing not only our work experience but also our lived experience. And the last thing is my husband is active duty veteran. I really appreciate having the veteran representation here in Colorado and the nuances that brings. So that's me.
Yeah, I love the further introductions. So my background, I worked for Silver Key for 8 years, which serves older adults, around 12,000 annually across key services like transportation, nutrition, and health and wellness was really my area that I had the privilege of working with and building some programming in. Now I find myself in a role where I'm with AARP, specifically an affiliate that focuses on technology, and its mission is to harness technology to change the way we age. And some other hats that I wear, I am vice chair for the board for Rocky Mountain Healthcare Services PACE. I also chair the Colorado Coalition for Elder Rights and Abuse Prevention. And I am also on the Digital Equity Committee for the state to kind of be the representative voice of seniors in that conversation while we plan digital infrastructure for the state.
I'm Paula Levy, and I have been in the Alzheimer's arena per se for going on 34 years now. Colorado Springs and Teller County, I've been in long-term care, day program, support group settings. I facilitate caregiver support groups, and I am just representing that sector really of that population, though I can talk seniors with the best of them. So,
And I'm here because of Paula, because I'm on the board of directors of the Teller Senior Coalition and also the Senior Center in Woodland Park. And so both those boards got a letter or something from here, sort of recruiting, asking for new folks. And it was kind of a topic of conversation at the Senior Coalition. But then speaking of Silver Key, the other thing I do is I deliver meals, Silver Key meals, from the Springs up to the Senior Center in Woodland Park 3 days a week. So I'm much more familiar with Silver Key than I ever thought I would be. But I went to the Senior Center, and the executive director and the president both corralled me. And this was the day after the discussion at the board meeting at the Teller Senior Coalition, and said, Steve, and they held up this letter. Well, I'd seen it the day before. He said, how would you like to serve on the Commission on Aging? I said, interesting, you should ask me that question. And so if it weren't for Paula, because she's the one who initiated that, I wouldn't be sitting here. And so recruitment works.
I am Mary Duran. I'm with UC Health. I am the older adult outreach manager. So I'm in community health and outreach. And so I'm working in El Paso and Teller County, working in senior living facilities, making sure we're providing health information, getting different providers to talk about topics. And then also creating a membership-based program, which is free for the hospital system called the Aspen Club. So continuing education and so forth. I previously was the director of the Colorado Springs Senior Center along with Jody. So I've been here since 2011 and have worked in the older adult industry since then.
Danielle McCarthy. Interesting way I kind of got here. It was through Mei Ling, through leadership class that we were in. So my background is as a military spouse turned into a veteran spouse. And I spent 20 some years caring for my husband. More recently, 2012 to 2017, I was his full-time caregiver. And I worked with another agency on the Western Slope, the Area Agency on Aging in Region 10, and their ADRC, their Aging and Disabilities Resource Council there. I was also contracted with them to go out and work with caregivers who were facing similar circumstances like I was. Essentially became REACH certified through the Rosalind Cotter Center for Caregiving, and have that entire background. And then I also now have Gold Star Spouse added to my resume, if you will. And so I appreciated some legislature that came through that gave us some tax advantages for home ownership, but been around the aging community for quite a while and still am to some extent. And I work for a local nonprofit as well as volunteer with the local nonprofit.
I guess I'll jump in. Amy Mitchell.
Go ahead, Amy.
Park County Commissioner. And I am over 60 as well. So I hit 2 slots. I'm here to advocate for Park County and the rural areas, since I have that perspective, and to just help bring some resources here and move things forward that will help seniors who want to age safely in their homes. So thank you.
Awesome. So I'm Jody Barker. I'm the Area Agency on Aging Director here. And so we fund a variety of services, including Silver Key and the Pikes Peak Elder Justice Center, through some of our Older Americans Act funding that we receive from the federal and state level. I've been in senior services now here going on 25 years. I was a previous senior center director, working with Mary over there at the Colorado Springs Senior Center. Have some time with the Alzheimer's Association, as well as quite a few years in managing home care agency here locally. So, I think if we sat down and did the math, we'd run out of fingers for the level of senior services that this committee provides, which is really a point of pride when we, took this, transferred the Commission on Aging over from the city under the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments, to be able to represent our older adults from a policy and legislative standpoint is going to be really crucial, especially as we see even in the most recent elections, there are opportunities and too many chances for older adult issues to fall through the cracks. And so having another opportunity to express those needs and to advocate for our seniors is going to be continue to be even more crucial than it has in the past. So thank you. It looks like we do have a guest that just came on. Who wants to introduce him? Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, Steve. I'm so glad that we were able to work out the technical things. Sorry about that. So excited to welcome you. So Steve Peterschmidt is now joining us on Zoom. I know a lot of folks recognize Steve. Paula and I met Steve for coffee, and Dayton extended his recommendations. So maybe I'll pass it to either of you if you wanted to say your hellos and your little binding of his joining us. But yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
So I'll kick off. Steve and I met as a partnership with Silver Key and Porchlight, his company, which I'm sure he'll talk about a little bit more. But just overall, our shared our shared interests in how crucial the social determinants of health are, and systems thinking on solutions, just the possibility. So I thought, given the systems view of this group and his passion for the aging space, was such a nice intersection, and his perspective would be well valued and a big asset to this conversation. So Steve comes with a high recommendation from me.
Hi, Steve. I enjoyed meeting you over coffee with Mei Ling and look forward to working with you and sharing ideas with you on this Commission on Aging.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And then just so you know, Steve, this is like a welcome, and then we'll do a formal vote in December if you feel like this is still a great fit. And we're really excited to have you. So I'll let you say your hellos, and then we'll keep diving into our information items.
All right. I apologize for being late. I was having some technology challenges, ironic because that's sort of my forte. But so my name is Steve Peterschmidt. I'm the founder of a company called Porchlight Health. And like Dayton mentioned, we partnered with Silver Key and other companies around the community to try to give seniors a digital voice. We firmly believe that if you're digitally isolated, then you're isolated. And so our mission is to find ways to connect all seniors so that their digital voice can be accounted for. And some of the ways that we do that is to connect them with their family members, also to do social determinant of health and needs assessments on an ongoing basis. And so that's data and opportunities for, providing feedback in and about our community. So I'll listen now, but I appreciate the opportunity to participate.
Great. And then I wanted to make sure I included Jared and Melissa, if you wanted to quickly share your whys of senior engagement and age inclusion, what makes you excited to be here? And yeah, then we'll keep kicking things off.
So this is Melissa, hiding behind the computer back on square number 4. Anyway, so I have been working at the Area Agency on Aging now for going on 4 years. And ironically, I'm starting our next 4-year plan. I was hired at the end of the 4-year plan last time, and now we're doing it again. And I came to this area primarily because of Kent Matthews. Some other folks have know about Kent Matthews too. I was caring for a grandmother when I first came across the Area Agency on Aging, and knew that this was a great program and a great place to have resources for the community, and I'm grateful to be working here.
Sure. And so I've almost been here for 2 months now, but I've loved every minute of it so far. And this is my first Commission on Aging meeting. So I'm really interested just to absorb and learn. I will say, I've got a retired mom who is an RN. My dad's a farmer back in Missouri. He's got the blinkers on for retirement. But I've got my mom as a retired RN is caring for both her father and my grandmother, my dad's mom. So I've already used a lot of the things I've learned here to try to help them back in Missouri as they just navigate, dealing with 90-year-old grandparents, and knowing that probably in a couple of decades I'll be in that position too. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to, as a lot of people say, we're the best kept secret, and that's a good thing, but it's also not, because that means no one knows that we're here, and so really diving in and making sure that people know that our services are here, that we can be a value to them, and whatever they need for the day-to-day things that they need for either for themselves, a family member, or a friend.
Great. Well, I definitely feel lucky that we have such an amazing team. And I think what's important is recognizing that we put in extra hard work the last 6 months and really working on understanding better how we can make COA a great representation of our team, and just feeling like we're really working to add to our community. So I appreciate everyone's thoughts and everyone's time. So this is great. And with my chair report, it's again rather informal in the sense of I want us to really focus on what some of our takeaways have been over the last 6 months with the strategic planning. Again, a big shout out to Pat Urban as well as PPACG for helping facilitate that. We're very grateful for her helping us take a deep dive. And then for the visitors, basically we had 3 months of facilitation with Pat Urban just to understand better what is our mission, what is our vision, what does work look like, how can we take this meeting outside of our doors. And so we really worked collaboratively just to make sure that we were all on the same page and how we can propel our motivations into action. So this is an interesting meeting to be in, because we went from the mission and vision and what is a method for us understanding issues to now how do we put the boots on the ground. So the work still continues, and I'm excited for us to have those conversations today. So I have met with Pat and just got some of her takeaways, and she felt that it was really encouraging how much we had done. And she definitely agreed that knowing we're all in the same spirit, the next big action item is the action. So I'm excited for us to talk about that today. And yeah, I feel like going into the next section of the agenda is just recapping some of our takeaways. I would like it to feel like more informal. I know we kind of have the way that we're set up here, but just, I would love it for it to feel holistic and some people's takeaways. And then also, one thing I think is really important is the principles of engagement. Danielle always talks about how it's important to have honest conversations, and and do it in a loving way, but do it in an authentic way. And so how do we do that in a way with, not becoming friends? So how we can be kind and thoughtful, but still authentic. So I think that principles of engagement is an exciting next step. And then the last is looking at our prioritizations tool. A big shout out to Dave Bessler for helping develop it, but looking at, there's so many issues in our community, and how do we not duplicate services, and how do we look at the work that we
want to ask if Amy and Steve are seeing August 17th, second facilitation on their screen. Okay, so we're good to go. Thanks.
So I don't want to dominate the conversation. I would just love for people to give some of their thoughts between the second and the third facilitation. I think the biggest thing that we learned from this meeting with Pat was identifying our North Star, i.e. the reason we're here, and how that should always be guiding us. So even if we get off track, that can be a way of recentering us, which is, we're here to improve the lives of older adults. And we're here to look at how we're not duplicating services and we're giving access to our community. So yeah, thoughts, takeaways.
I'll give my perspective on the exercise and also additional context, if I may. I think that the strategy around having 3 facilitations was kind of this sort of build up. And since this group was relatively new and convening and getting to learn each other, who we are and what this group is meant to do, that first facilitation was so important to kind of set a foundation, not only getting the history from Jody, but that North Star that Mei Ling is speaking to, so that we know where we're going and what we're trying to accomplish. In the second facilitation, we really try to build on that by saying, okay, now that we know philosophically and historically where we are at, how do we put this into motion and how do we operate? And I kept on using the word operationalization throughout these exercises. Like, how do we operationalize what we're trying to do? And that then led to kind of a process. And that process needs tools. And when Mei Ling says the prioritization tool being a mechanism that we look at in order to kind of prioritize all these important issues that we're presented with, is something that still needs solidifying to this day. And I think that's what was suggested in the third facilitation material, is kind of where do we find ourselves? And in that third facilitation, we were able to talk through what are some indicators that we want to look at in order to help us prioritize. What in our prioritization tool are we looking at to prioritize? And that was the impact, the duplication of work with other entities, the time needed to do those things. So the idea was that this tool would essentially be a matrix to guide us. And it's really up to us on how we use that tool. I think that in addition to the guiding principles was another complementary thing that we wanted to kind of have solidified before we start getting things in front of us. And the things in front of us, and sorry, I'm backtracking to the second facilitation, are defined by data, right? And what are our sources of data that we're looking at in order to put into the prioritization tool? And we had talked about both the quantitative and the qualitative data. And I see, this group placing a big value on the qualitative side, where we're listening to folks from the different communities that we're trying to bring the voices to the table. And so how can we as a commission be intentional about hearing folks out? Well, at the same time, on the quantitative side, being really defined on what our key resources are in terms of, from the demographer's office to all the great community assessments going on, that's shedding light on the gaps and where some things can use some voice to, and getting those things in front of us so that we're all informed as we put these different topics within the prioritization tool. So I hope that's helpful in terms of kind of where we find ourselves, at least from my perspective today. And my hope today is that we are able to further the conversation in terms of the prioritization tool, as well as the principles that we talked about.
I just want to like slow clap. Thank you for yeah, thank you. So I know that we have guests, so I don't know if we want to have some questions about where we're at, or if we want to just keep going full steam ahead, because I think it's an exciting time when you're figuring out who you are, when you want to be when you grow up. So making sure that we have a great foundation, I think I definitely want to give credit to Paula, because she really encouraged us to take this time for reflection, because it's really easy to think about all the needs of our community and not look internally about how we can be strong ourselves. So are there any questions from our guests or any more takeaways?
I'd like to just tell our guests that when we started this process, that a lot of us were new to the table, just like you are today, which is why we took the time to have the strategy sessions and to have a facilitator from the outside come in to help guide us and direct us and help us get our words on the table so we knew what direction we were going. So don't think that we've been at this for a long time and we know what we're talking about, because we don't. I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
I have a question. I know if this had been brought up, I'm not sure if it actually happened, to review and assess other commissions and the internal working, and then review that and see if any of those strategies could be implemented with how we're doing?
I know that's still an action item. I know on individual professional bases, I know that there can be some thoughts, but I don't think as a unified COA we've done that. So I do think that that's something to be done, because why remake it when it's been already completed in some regard? Did you want to give your thoughts? Yeah.
Thanks, Mei-Ling. Such an important question, Mary. I think there's opportunity. I know a gal, Perla, in Denver, who it is kind of the Jody, if you will, up there corralling the Commission on Aging in Denver for the city of Denver. So I think we have an in terms of getting insight on how that commission functions. Additionally, I don't know his last name. His first name's Bob, though, and he was just appointed on the State Commission on Aging, and he sits on the Colorado Coalition for Elder Rights Abuse Prevention with me. And he is more than welcome. He's welcomed the thought of sharing information that he's learning from there with us as well. So I think it's really about us being intentional in our questions, so we gain that insight, so that in terms of our time, or really my time, going to there, I don't want to have to go there and like sit at the table and like learn from that point, but what questions are we generally curious of, so we're getting really rich information that we could translate into what we're doing.
It's important to understand too, as you're having these conversations, the Colorado Commission on Aging is really been is in just 2 months into a complete redesign. And so you're probably talking about Bob Held Yeah. So he's also a AAA director, so he would understand kind of where you all are coming from and stuff like that. So but there are several several commissions or councils on aging in the Denver metro region, and we could track those down and figure out who to talk to as you all are moving forward, talking about their makeup and their focus. I believe one is associated with a government entity up there, and I believe the other serves as a nonprofit board, so completely independent. So something to consider.
And then Dane, to go back, you're saying, I feel like we've sorted through what the structure will look like. So in terms of asking questions, more of that action item and passing issues to legislative platform. So I think that in my head, that's where I see us gaining some insight from other commissions. So we have our groundwork, but then it's, okay, what's the next step? And then how can we learn from others to move things forward? That's how I see it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think the nuanced piece will be kind of the organizational chart, if you will. Because I'm completely ignorant to the idea around if they have a RAC or a legislative subcommittee that falls under their PPACG board, or how their like committees interface, because ours is I guess prospectively moving forward with the idea that we are interfacing with these committees and using them as kind of mechanisms to get to the legislative sort of voice piece. But yeah, I think to your point, getting insight in that first and foremost of like, what is your structure and who do you primarily, talk with in order to make things happen is an important question. It's a great one.
Yeah, I don't think either are related to the AAA there directly. So they're not part of the DRCOG structure, which is the equivalent of our PPACG, of course. And so there would not be a regional advisory council as part of that construct. But like I said, we can find out who they are, who they're affiliated with. And that would then kind of speak to some of their structure and some of their operations. But yeah, I'd be happy to help with that.
I would be more than happy to take an action item out of this. With maybe Jody and I can reach out to Perla and Bob, and we could gain a little bit more insight in their structures.
I think it's also, oh, sorry, Melissa.
Can I
Yeah.
just add a little bit here too, that kind of dovetails in with that. The Colorado Center on Aging, which used to be the Colorado Senior Lobby. I know Amy's been attending those meetings pretty regularly, which is quite exciting to know that we have a commissioner, not only from Park County Commissioner, but a Commission on Aging Commissioner attending those meetings. And I think it's interesting that none of the other Commission on Agings like ours around are attending those meetings. So, it is a really great question to kind of dig a little deeper into what the other Commission on Agings around our region, around our state are doing, number one. So that is an ongoing good thing to be looking into. But the other thing that the Colorado Center on Aging brought up at the last two meetings was that they are hosting a meeting, bringing in the different groups that advocate on behalf of seniors. And those groups are like the Alzheimer's Association, DRCOG with their lobbying effort around aging, because oftentimes they will represent the State Unit on Aging and lobbying efforts that the State Unit on Aging is caring about. And so kind of really big entities, and they were going to be meeting once a month so that they could kind of be saying, okay, we're all these groups that lobby on behalf of aging. Are we all on the same page, or are we thinking differently? And so that was kind of spearheaded by Rich Morrow, which some folks know who Rich is. And he's the lobbyist for DRCOG and has been around a long, long time. So it's interesting to see the structure that's unfolding at the Colorado Center on Aging. And I'll let Amy share if she has any comments about that. Because again, I think I'm really I'm super excited to know that she's been attending those meetings.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah. I've been attending those for, boy, a little over a year. And I am a voting member. And I think the meetings that they're bringing all the other service providers like AARP and everything into the monthly conversation is when they are choosing what legislation to track, lobby for, or lobby against. They are folding in information from all of those advocacy groups to make sure that they're getting it just right. And if we need to talk to any of the legislators to put a tweak or maybe put in an amendment, that they're trying to get it right on the first draft or this first go around in the legislative session. So I think it's good work. Last year was a little crazy on COA because they tried to track way too many bills. And I understand the goal and the reason for it, but you got to pick your battles. And if you spread yourself too thin, you're not going to get anywhere because you won't be effective in any kind of testimony at any of the committees. So I'm looking forward to filtering through what bills pop up. Hopefully some pop up soon before we get into the thick of things in January when the session starts. And think they've made good progress in their organization. So thank you for that, Melissa. And it'll be a good year.
So I'm really excited to hear this animation around legislative representation, but I also think it's really important for us to also talk about that being almost one arm of our work, and the other arm is the boots on the ground. How do we impact our community and actually connect with people in a really human way? So I know that on this commission, we have a really great diversified skill set, and we have folks that you could say almost specialize in one arm versus the other. So I think it's really important just how we're looking at what does the work look like legislatively, what does the work look like in terms of our community and connecting with our folks.
I'll chime in.
Go ahead, Amy.
Well, from my perspective, I mean, we can utilize the questionnaire that was done by PPACG and the senior coalitions and senior centers to as an easy way to get information on what is lacking in our communities. I have a good idea of what's lacking in Park County, but it's not. We can't flip the switch and fix what we need in Park County, but it's a way to gather information and then try to prioritize what might need our focus on first.
So I just returned from a dementia conference just this afternoon in North Carolina. And I know Jody's real familiar with the Alzheimer's Association, as am I. I've volunteered for them for many, many years. And the difference between the association that I know and volunteer for and the group that I was learning from, the TPA snow approach, and they just started a new foundation where they're trying to raise funds, are that one is boots on the ground, hands-on education, teaching people, not that the Alzheimer's Association isn't, but to me, the Alzheimer's Association is about the dollar and the research and that. And I see a disconnect there a little bit when one group is really, they're educating, don't get me wrong, but to me, the bottom line there is let's fundraise, let's get this done, let's do that. And the other group is really let's teach and educate and change the way care is happening everywhere, not just America. I mean, I sat next to a lady from Australia at this conference. This is worldwide. And so that's the kind of stuff that I I want to see it make a difference, not just make a million or make a goal for a walk, or I want to see that kind of thing. And that's just me. And that's what I'm about, is making a difference. And that's why when I saw a need in my community and I developed an adult day program from nothing, because that's what we needed in Teller County. I like that versus saying, we need dollars. I like to say we need people to know and how to educate and how to train and how to take care of people in facilities. Because I can tell you, I get 5 calls a day from family members that tell me horror stories about what's happening to their family member in facilities. And it's awful. It's awful. So I don't know if that was relative, but I just needed to say it because I just came off an amazing conference that if people could do what they do, it would change the face of dementia care in the world.
So I think maybe to wrap what you set up to what the action item that Dayton and Jody are going to take on. So that's more of figuring out the legislative platform, maybe taking what you're saying and also Amy about listening is figuring out who are the boots on the ground folks that we're going to, right? So is it care facilities that we're going to go to try to seek, okay, the care facilities, do they need more training? What are the barriers that they're finding, right? And I know we have a set groundwork of how we vet that information and whatnot, but where are we getting that boots on the ground information? Who are the people we talking to? Who are the groups that we're seeking out for? I think that may be something that we need to look at and dive deeper to, because we kind of have an idea of, okay, the commission structure through other commissions, but we all know people while we're involved in different groups and committees, but how do we make that connection, that bridge? So yeah, does that make sense?
It makes so much sense to me. I think that comes in tandem with bringing awareness to the communities that we're there to listen, that there is an awareness that this commission is there to represent and hear them out and do something about it, to an extent, of course. But because I have a feeling that there are probably pockets in El Paso County, Teller, and Park that are unaware that we even exist. And so whenever we're trying to hear them and get those voices that we're really listening for, so that we can have a true picture of their experience, how do we do that? And to me, it's first awareness of this commission being there and establishing a presence. So how do we establish a presence and spread the awareness that we're there, and then building predictability around that? So I don't know if that comes in the form of like we have listening sessions every quarter or whatever the case may be, but that then kind of builds within people's routines. And I think that is an effective way of people having something that they know is there, and can go there to, contribute in the way that they want to.
So I think that bringing all of this from being more of a analytical perspective to the what is next. When I was speaking with Pat, and she also said this the last facilitation, is almost doing a mock first trial of actually implementing our prioritization and looking at how we can do next steps. And when she was mentoring me, she actually advised that we pick something that is, workable for, a less than 10-person team. So like, for example, there's an initiative going on right now giving coats to older adults that don't have any for the winter. And you can see how that can have the two legs of our work. It's literally boots on the ground, but it also can have a certain advocacy and or legislative component of, why are these folks being put in these positions? Maybe they don't have the transportation to get their new coat. Maybe they don't have the ability to invest in something like that. So I think that there can be two ways of identifying the problems as well as the solution on projects that we want to start to look at. Maybe it's every quarter, but how do we take it from, okay, this approach of homelessness? No, we, as a 10-person team, we can't do that right now. So what is action items that we can have both arms of our work looking at?
I know a current issue going on is the city is looking for input on structure, build, programming of the new senior center. And I know they've had a lot of listening sessions with older adults and with stakeholders, business owners who are in that area, some of our service providers as well. And so I don't know where those conversations are going. And maybe that's something that we can do research or have an open ear to, just an idea.
So I just put back up on our screen, and hopefully I'm going to check with our people online. This would be strategy session 3. And so you guys are seeing that on, okay. And so we have like process to prioritize areas to support. We have these 5 things listed here. So as Mary brings up the possibility of the Colorado Springs Senior Center, you know, as an opportunity to do some work, you know, impact, duplication of work of others, time needed, regional, market demand. So we could literally try to, you know, kind of apply those 5 pieces to this Colorado Springs Senior Center conversation. The next thing that we talked about was under next steps, you know, what kind of scale do we use? You know, so we might say that talking about and doing something around the Colorado Springs Senior Center, it's an impact. How big of an impact? Is it a scale of 1 to 5? Are we going to make, if we, you know, engage with that, are we going to be making a, you know, an impact of a 5 or a 4, or do we even want to weight it at all? So if I can throw out there to the group to take just a few minutes and take Mary's example of, you know, the Commission on Aging possibly doing some work to engage with the efforts for the Senior Center in Colorado Springs to move forward. How would that apply to the prioritization tool that has been developed, and this idea that we want to, you know, possibly have different things weighted in order to have a better feel of if we wanted to tackle it. So I'm just going to throw that out there for people.
It's just an idea. I know that's it's centralized, right? It's one county versus multitudes, but it just throwing it out there.
And we got to start somewhere, because I think we do. We keep talking about how, you know, the prioritization tool, the weighting of it, but, you know, I think it's good, you know, do we do a coat drive for seniors? You know, do we talk about the Colorado Springs Senior Center? You know, just start playing around with this tool that this group has worked really hard to create. So,
or do we collaborate with the city and help host meetings, you know, feedback meetings, roundtables to get the feedback and have the listening ear so that they feel like they're being heard by people that matter, that will carry their suggestions and ideas and input back to the people that are making the decisions about the senior center. That goes back to my point about, you know, we need to meet where the seniors are. They're not going to show up at this meeting on a Wednesday afternoon. We need to travel to the Woodland Park Senior Center and meet with them during a lunch hour when everyone's there, and then have them listen to a meeting and hear what we talk about. You know, I just don't see people making the trek here unless Silver Key makes it a point and we announce it and say, we're going to be, you know, here and picking up people so you guys can come and hear about the Commission on Aging. I don't think we're going to get the people where they need to be to hear what's going on with this unless we go to them. But can we be the mouthpiece and provide the center, the place where people can come and talk about what they want from the senior center and feel like they're being heard, instead of filling out a survey and thinking, is this even going to get weighted? Is this even going to get scored?
I think there's also, oh, go ahead, Steve.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, I have a sort of a fundamental question, and I apologize again, being the last guy in, whether or not you've already covered this. What is the measurement for success for the commission? And to me, it would be easier to consume this conversation if I knew sort of what success really looked like and how we're going to be measuring that. As to because I think the prioritization tool is awesome, and the mechanisms that we're talking about are great, but I'm just not sure what success looks like. So it's hard to, like I say, sort of put this together in my brain.
Me Mitchell here, in looking at our second facilitation, and I've got it on a separate computer, so that's why I keep looking over there. It says improve lives for seniors. I mean, that's our kind of big goal. So everything we need to do needs to do that. How we get there and what it is we do to reach that goal on our projects is what we're trying to figure out.
Okay. Thanks.
It's a very important question, Steve. And I think kind of considering the mechanisms we're talking about and who we interface with, we want to be able to see tangibly the needles that we're moving. And I think about us, the COA, being a subject matter expert and an asset to decision makers. So, for the city council who are convening subject matter experts around, the senior center, or, the community development department convened subject matter experts to talk about how seniors are included in new housing legislation coming down the pipeline. So COA being the top of mind whenever these things come to the surface, I think are sort of, they're not as tangible, but I would use those as measures of, hey, we're now gaining that credibility, the reputation as the listening ear and the representative voice of seniors. I also see it on a policy side, because one of the primary groups that we're interfacing with is the legislative committee here under the PPACG umbrella, and being able to give them information with, hypothetically, we have already prioritized the topics that we're going to, drive forward and move to the legislative committee, who are then, actively deciding whether they're opposing, actively, advocating for, et cetera. And that then goes to the PPACG board. And I would like to see, and again, this is from my perspective, so take it with a grain of salt, to see us at the PPACG board, which include our civic leaders, as they see leaning on the COA as the subject matter experts and moving the needle toward, okay, we are going to actively, considering what COA is saying, we are going to actively oppose or actively advocate for, and seeing that bill get passed as a result of whether our sliver of contribution would be, I think, a success in my mind.
That was awesome. And because it feels like, there are different channels, right, where that voice needs to be raised, and that sounds like local legislation as well as other groups. So I guess what I hear you saying is that that's actually a measurable thing, right? We can identify the opportunities for that voice to be raised, and then have different groups or whatever that do that, and that could be accomplishments, right?
So I think last year was also interesting in terms of the markers of success. So I appreciate that left brain, what does this look like? So some examples of markers of success was I sat on the legislative committee and once a week was a part of their meetings to get an ear to the ground of what was going on and to also extend thoughts on behalf of the commission of how that legislation was impacting older adults, whether it was talking about veterans issues, whether it was advocating around housing affordability. So that was one marker of success, was being invited to those meetings and being able to give not only thoughts, but relay what was happening back to the commission. I think some other markers of success was us giving our stamp, if you will, to some of the activities in the community. So we signed an endorsement letter for Innovations 2.0 Age Friendly. We also signed an endorsement letter for Greshio Housing on housing affordability. So being able to give that endorsement is another marker. And I think that that is something that we would like to continue. I think we also did a lot of information sharing. So just understanding what was going on in terms of issues and having folks, you'll see as it being an agenda item of community presentation, is folks talking about what they're doing in the community. A perfect example is the CARES team working with Silver Key and a couple of other stakeholders on reducing 911 calls for older adults. So when I think about measurements of success, I think that those are some tangibles, but I think that moving forward, we can continue to elevate that because we don't want to just be a rubber stamp. We want to also look at how we can have a certain level of human centeredness. And so if we want to endorse Greshio Housing, or if we want to endorse Silver Key, how are we also connecting to the community and really understanding that? So I think that we can just continue to compound those markers, but I appreciate that it's a lot of work and it can be almost muddy.
There are also, a lot of what we talked about, both in looking forward and looking back to things done. A lot of this is vertical. It's coming from the discussions of the Commission on Aging, moving through the AAA up to the legislative subcommittee of the board of directors. There's also the viewpoint that's horizontal, and that's reaching outwards to the community. And so, some of the early discussions in moving the commission from the city out to the regional, the regional makeup was really taking an opportunity to advocate for older adult issues when sometimes so many items at the local legislative level don't consider the aging demographic in projects. So whether that's a city council meeting and talking about sidewalks, is there someone there to advocate for appropriate construction to advocate for those needs of older adults in that community? And so that's something to consider as well, that, I'm not saying you have to, you should go to every city council meeting and, raise your arm, but really thinking about those opportunities, if in your area, if in your circle of influence, that there's an opportunity to advocate for older adults, then this is a perfect example of that. Of course, anything formalized, getting to my, putting on my PPACG director hat, anything formalized like the letters that the Commission on Aging did last year, have to go through a formal vote process and can be done. There's no problem with that, but there is a process to that. But there's also nothing to stop you as an individual citizen sitting in a city council meeting or a county commissioner meeting and listening for those opportunities to share what about our aging population. How has this been considered for our older adults? And so I would encourage the commissioners to always keep that in mind too, that it's not just vertical up to the board of directors for the PPACG, but ultimately horizontal out to the community, out to the out to those opportunities that we might not ever see in a vertical view. So there's also something to consider as well. There are sometimes opportunities that you may see in your circle of influence that I may never see, or that Melissa may never see, or none of my staff might ever see. Those are opportunities that we would encourage you to provide feedback to us, so that we can help, whether it's from an advocacy standpoint, a legislative standpoint, whatever the case might be. One example I like to share is early on during the pandemic, there was a phone number established at the state level for people to get information about about COVID, how to get vaccinations and things like that. And there was some discussion. It had just been announced. There was some discussion at a staff meeting. Have you called it? No, I haven't called it. Have you heard? No, I haven't heard. One of our staff jumps off the Zoom. She's going to go call the number and see what's going on. She comes back and you could see the steam rising out of her ears, even on Zoom. She said, there's absolutely no way to get out of that telephone loop. It gives an email, it gives a website, but there's absolutely no way to talk to an individual. We got out of that meeting, and my first phone call was to Jarrett Hughes, who is the Senior Policy Advisor on Aging in the governor's office. I said, we've got a problem here. This isn't just eliminating access to any number of the population of Colorado, but I'm here to advocate for my older adults. It was one phone call. And within, what did we say? Within 3 days, it was being manned by people. And that's what you have to do. So I would encourage that. I feel very strongly about never standing down around advocating for our older adults. Some of you have seen me do that in this room and know that will always be a driving factor for me. So I would encourage you, when and if you ever have that opportunity, to take it. So it goes without saying that I've got your back on that. So.
So maybe to pull it all together again, we kind of defined what success is, and success is impacting older adults' life, seeing issues elevated, endorsing issues that maybe we need to. We have both the boots on the ground and legislative voice. So I don't know, in my head, I feel like we have a good groundwork of what we are, what we're doing, where we're headed. It's just now what?
That's great to recognize the elephant in the room. And I'm going to say, with humbleness, I think that we've done all of this process as a team. So I think that we need to decide as a team what makes sense. But I also am interested in knowing, what does December look like? What are we actually going to start doing? Because we've done a great job of being so thoughtful as a team. But what does December look like? What does 2023 look like? What is our next steps? How do we want to do a dry run of a community concern and start to put some actual tangible action items? And if we want to do that, what does it look like, even individually? Like, what is going to be our individual responsibilities for it? That's why I think we need to iron out right now.
I think one easy thing to do is to let people know we are who we are. If that is outreach to nonprofits, if there's an agency that we can connect to that they can send it out to, I don't know, there's like a group of nonprofits out there, you know what I'm saying? We can send it out to and they can share. I know when the commission was under the city, we had voice under the city, right? And so how can we reconnect within those channels just for the city folks to know, hey, we're still here. So maybe figuring out what communications can we create so the public know that we are here.
I think an article in the newspaper might be a place to start. And I know the Gazette is connected to the Pikes Peak Courier in Woodland Park. And I know Pat Hill, and I know she's always looking for a nice story to tell instead of what's in the news most of the time. So I can put that in her queue and see if she would be interested. And then maybe the Gazette would pick it up and run it in their paper too. And sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes they start with it in their paper and it runs in the smaller papers, but just an article in the paper or getting on Fox Morning, program and just having some of us go on and tell people what one of the morning news programs and just tell people what's going on with seniors. I don't know. It's just
Paula, would you do an email introduction to Jared with that person?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because Jared would take the lead on that for the organization and of course for the commission. So,
and if I could chime in, Jared, our county newspaper is the Flume, and I am happy to provide you with their contact information. And to also let you guys know, unless you are grandfathered in, we do not have access to Colorado Springs media being television. We are mandated to watch Denver television. And unless you had it prior to, I think, 1999 or something like that. So some things won't help Park County, but anything you can do to the more populated areas, we will not object to.
I'd like to kind of take a little bit of a step back in terms of thinking about what December looks like, what January looks like. Dayton and Jody are talking about doing a deeper dive into the different commissions and what they look like. We had on our agenda that we wanted to talk about principles of engagement. And so I do have a document that the Pikes Peak Elder Justice Center created around principles of engagement. And so I guess I would just throw out, if there's other people on the commission who wanted to get together over the next month or two and think about drafting a document of principles of engagement. Again, that's just kind of going to keep this group moving ahead. But it gets at that piece of, when conflict might come up between commissioners around topics and issues, we engage the principles of engagement to get through those challenging conversations. So if anybody wanted to, be a little mini subcommittee of 2 or 3 and wanted to look at tackling that could be an activity that could be done in the next couple of months too, in addition to digging into the Commission on Aging work across the state.
I'm happy to help.
So I have 1 signed up. Great. And people can reach out, and I'm here to help too. So I'll be on that committee. But
and Melissa, what that sparks for me, thank you, Mary, and thank you for raising that, Melissa. I think of a few other action items because I also see on this facilitation 3 of defining what those prioritization indicators are. And I would be happy to take a stab at that, as well as like the weighted. I think originally I was assigned to do that. I just have not done it. So I will make that on the record as an action item for me of doing the matrix for the prioritization tool. And in December, we could do some feedback on that. So aside from that, I think another really cool thing to do going into next year is to orient ourselves around all of the timelines that go on throughout the year and how we can be strategic in our timeline in complementing whatever's already set. So if, for example, there's, the legislative committee does something, or the PPACG board does something, whatever the case may be, high high profile events that we need to be aware of so that we're strategic in our timing. I would love for that to kind of be in front of us next month so we can then begin to schedule for next year.
So the planning continues. I think that those are some great action items. I think that it just reinforces the value of this group on being intentional and methodological. I definitely encourage us to not get caught up in the minutia of organizing and to eventually feel like we can be empowered to actually implement. But I also know that we don't want to put the buggy before the horse. So I think that it's important for us to be conscionable of that. And then the last thing is that I really want to encourage this group, even on a personal note. I came here pretty green and I stay pretty green, and the level of thought and care, I think, really reflects the fact that even inadvertently we've implemented principles of engagement. We don't make people feel, that we're a hierarchy. We really encourage collaboration. I've never felt not welcomed. So I really want to encourage that. I think that we've done a lot of the work just by being really great people. And shout out to having Paula that's welcoming in those people, right? So I think that we're in good shape. And I almost feel like we're kind of at that point where we have some action items right now, maybe some last takeaways, and then I think that we're pretty good right now for this meeting. Any thoughts on next steps? Yeah.
I love the sentiment, Mei Ling. I couldn't agree more. I think this group is amazing. I always will remember our day where we went around and talked about our passion and our why, in terms of caregiving, really getting everyone fired up. That conversation just really keeps a spark in me personally. I think as another action item, potentially, the age-friendly visioning session is tomorrow at the city auditorium. And I think that's going to be a really critical source of information to gain an understanding of where Colorado Springs and El Paso County is representatively across the age-friendly domains. So if you can, please make that. There's going to be a lot of important conversations going on. It's truly a working session where there's facilitators at the tables. We're going to be asking questions and trying to get the insight of a lot of the folks there who are participating. So speaking of December, I don't know, maybe I could pull some strings at Innovations to have some insight into that information, but it begs the question of like, what information can we start getting in front of us in December? Speaking to those repositories, right? So we said, what is the demographer's office? What assessments can we get our hands on for December's conversation? I don't know if the AAAs or if, the hospital systems or what other assessments are out there that we can actually start looking at and gleaning some direction from on some topics that we want, or issues that we want to tackle. But that's just another sort of, I should know that. Okay, thank you, Mary. I think you're right. I should know that. I'm kicking it off.
So Dayton, in terms of statistics and information, the state AAA directors met in October and were given the latest demographer statistics for the state of Colorado, not yet county by county, but at least the state of Colorado. And then also the community assessment survey of older adults for the 4-year plan with a lot of information. Again, that data was for the state, not for the 3 counties that we serve, but it is really good information. And so those, along with whatever comes out of tomorrow's meeting with Innovations, can be a really good piece of, line items for December's meeting. So I have that down.
We're still waiting on some of that data to be sorted out to the granular level, to the county level. And then of course, we had all of our community conversations, specifically targeting commentary around services across the 3-county region and specific communities. We did 9 of those across the region. And so the team is still kind of breaking down that information. So I know that there'll be information to share. We've talked about that with the leadership as well. Share that information back and forth, because of course Age Friendly had very specific questions and conversation, and we had hours that were very specific around specific services that we have to meet for our contractual obligations with the state and our Older Americans Act funding. But I think there's really great opportunity to collaborate with that information to share across not just the county from the Age Friendly perspective, but also from the region, because whether, there is information that, we could write the report sitting at our desk because we know it, we work it, we live it, but there was just so much more added to that by being in person with folks, both in rural and in more populous areas, that really will lend a whole new voice to the report when we're finished with it. But there's just, I think there's still, even though Age Friendly had their specific questions and AAA had their specific questions, I think there's going to be really great opportunity for collaboration to share that information once it all gets sorted.
That sounds wonderful. I'm really excited to look at it. I think as time goes, we'll also, after flexing our muscle around data review and kind of all this information coming at us, I think it's a good sort of maybe approach of sharing like all the data if everyone's comfortable. I think it's like a group conversation we need to have of like, how do we want to ingest the data, because there's so much of it. And so like, I don't know, Jody and Melissa, in terms of like, if you all can sort through and like give us the bullet points, because the board report type of thing, if we could have this sort of filtered level of data that's given to us, so we're not having to sort through 30 pages. I think that's a great way to start, is like, give me all the 30 pages, I want to read it. But we'll get to a place down the road, I think, maybe second quarter of next year, where we could lean on AAA staff to give us kind of like the bullet points and the high level points to inform us on the data side, ideally.
Yeah, I'm sure we can figure that out. Our report is due to the state in March. So we'll be doing our formal report out to to RAC and the board of directors in February, to give opportunity. While there's no specific requirement of writing and then public input, we did the public input on the front end, and then we're disseminating that information. So it looks a little different than some of our other reporting requirements, but we will have that in report form and ready to go to the state to meet our deadlines in March. So second quarter shouldn't be a problem. The whole thing will be there, and we'll be able to share that information. It's a public doc. Everything we do is public. So it'll be a public document and you'll have access to it.
So I think that we start to land on announcements, but I just also wanted to highlight that the next commission meeting is December 21st, a wink away from Christmas. So I hope that works for folks to still convene. And then all of our executive sessions are open. So if you would like to join us on the first Wednesday at 10:30 in the morning, we will welcome your additional thoughts. And the policy committee is still under development, but looking forward to some 2023 announcements or rumblings. Are there any other announcements that folks wanted to elevate?
I just wanted to add to that, Age Friendly, the conference I was at, they were talking age friendly airports. and really focusing on, there's some movement in North Carolina where they have trained airport staff to be very aware of dementia specific, but all age friendly. And after traveling, I sat next to an elderly lady who actually needed help to get up to use the restroom, help to find her seatbelt again. And it's everywhere. And not just dementia specific, but they had video of a rude airport employee trying to help a gentleman. I mean, it was play, it was recreated, but, and then the how to do it the right way with someone who really knew how to really talk to this person and I didn't know if that was something the city had ever looked at, is in certain settings like airport or ER, or because that's where they're the frequent flyers, and that's when the ER staff just gets frustrated and like, here she is again, and instead of knowing how to approach and treat. So I just wanted to throw that.
Well, I can speak to our healthcare system. There is dementia education training that's going to be rolling out through the system. So it's started in the northern region, so Fort Collins area, and it's going to be trickled out. And it kind of, you mentioned TIPA snow. It has that concept, but it has others as well. We've had a very robust conversation. And are you taking notes, Melissa? Okay. Could you, just so that even for myself, just maybe list the action items that we had talked about so that it's all on our mind?
So I have 5 action items written down. I have to look at letting entities know that the COA is here. Article in the paper, Fox News in the morning, whatever that might look like. Working on the principles of engagement. Finishing up the prioritization tool with the matrix and the weighting and the indicators. Bringing up and creating a timeline and tracking, important critical things that are happening. And then doing a little bit of research about the COAs around the state and what they're doing. So those are the 5 action items. Oh, and then literally at the meeting in December, having some presentation of data. And I have people's names written by some things. Did I miss anything? Anything I should have added? All right.
Thank you for distilling that. And thank you for that reminder. I think that we have some great action items and some great next steps. So sorry with this being kind of an awkward ending. I know that we, have some announcements. We have solidified our action items, alerted folks to the calendar. I think that, is there any last?
Yeah, just noticing number 10 on our agenda, the December PPACG board meeting has been changed due to some county level scheduling conflicts. This is very out of the ordinary, I would say. So if you are interested in attending the PPACG Board of Directors meeting, it is now Thursday, December 8th at 9 a.m. here in this room. And then I'll also remind folks that because of the holidays, the Regional Advisory Council, whose meeting is normally on Thanksgiving, it's always the 4th Thursday. We always move that to the following Thursday. And so Regional Advisory Council for November is technically December 1st at 10 a.m. also here in this room, and there will not be a December meeting. So RAC meeting December 1st, no December meeting. The next meeting after that will be the January meeting, and that's the 4th Thursday of the month. That's all I got.
Great. So any other last announcements or thoughts before we adjourn? Again, a big welcome to our visitors. It's great to have you here. We're excited to continue the good work. a lot going on. So hopefully we didn't scare you, but animated you. So any last thoughts or any last announcements? Steve, were you wanting to say anything?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, thanks. Thanks for letting me participate. I'm excited to see how I can jump in and add value.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone. We're adjourned. Have a great rest of your evening and happy Thanksgiving.